Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe.
Should I do like a typical YouTuber intro?
I think that would be so funny.
All right, here we go. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in today. Don't forget to go ahead and hit that subscribe button and also hit the bell for notifications. So we're gonna go ahead and jump into today's topic. We're gonna talk about the top 10. I don't do top 10 lists. How do top 10 lists work? Top 10 ways to bribe your dungeon master.
Number 1, sex.
Whoa, 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 calm down.
I mean, it worked in my case.
Hey everybody. What? Hey everybody. We here at CriticalRole do not condone prostituting yourself for the sake of level ups, no matter how very effective it may actually be. So please do not try in any way sell your body to your game master for a Vorpal sword, level ups, and or the ability to seduce the BBEG as well. But let's be honest, you've already seduced the dungeon master.
I seduced mine and I got married to him.
You need to not say stuff like that while I'm on camera. Anyways, that very silly intro out of the way. Spoiler warning. So, all the silly goofiness out of the way, today we are actually talking about a relatively heavy topic, which is the concept of fate. Specifically in, of course, TTRPGs, but if you've watched any amount of my channel, you know that it doesn't stay within TTRPGs at the end of the video. Eventually, it gets heavy somewhere along the line. We'll see if that happens today. But I really wanted to talk about this concept because I think it's very interesting. Fate is a concept that is very prevalent in most, if not all, of storytelling media. And of course it is, because not only is it something really interesting to think about as us, as mortals with a human condition of knowing that we live on this world and wondering if we have a purpose, but when it comes to stories, there is somebody overarching over everything, looking at it all, writing, creating, developing the story. So fate is inevitably going to be a question asked because the characters are being developed. But what's even more interesting is in TTRPGs, you have two parts of that coin. Of course, you have the game master sitting in the background, developing fate, creating it, but then there is also the player who is playing the player character, creating this fascinating dichotomy. And what do I mean by fate specifically when I'm talking about this? Well, I'm talking about fate as in the concept that a player character feels as if, or knows as if, they are fated to a certain scenario. And I'm going to use two different examples today because that's what I always do. And as usual, the examples today are gonna be from CriticalRole and Dimension 20.
With wisdom, you seek to understand your story. The first story you find is yours, right? You're not sort of twice upon a time. You find your story and you can kind of like reject this and not go into it. On a 15 as you reach for understanding. What do you think you're trying to understand about your story?
This is wild. This is an insane level of meta thought between me, why I chose this character, and me playing it, and now me, the character. Pinocchio seeks to understand because he wants to know why his life has been so hard, why it needed to be this hard, why everything has always been as hard as it was, why nothing has ever worked out. Why do other children get to lie and steal and still live good lives, and why does any time I choose to do those things I get hung or my feet get burned or my father gets eaten by, like, it's like every time I fail or have a misstep I suffer the ultimate consequences, and that doesn't happen to other kids. And I want to know why what was the goal? Why did I have to suffer?
We'll start with the first example, Vax. Vax is a character from Campaign 1 that is extremely beloved. And true to my form of not typically vibing with Liam's character so much, he's not my favorite. But he really grew on me as the campaign went on and as the years have gone on. Vax is a very brash rogue, a rogue who constantly goes into danger without thinking too much. Liam himself has stated that he really wanted Vax to be this type of character, which went against the very cunning and very cautious rogue archetype. Of course Vax is cunning, don't get me wrong, but Liam specifically causes him to go into danger more often than not because he thought it was a more interesting character choice rather than just allowing him to always be cautious and always try and be a Batman-esque character who always has a contingency in place.
I am running straight at the window, and as I run, Yeah, past them. Don't go anywhere near her. And I'm using dash.
As your action.
Yeah, and I'm just leaping out the window and saying, Jenga.
Fireball! As you run past, you can see there's this moment where it's almost like they're just letting it happen. There's no momentary aggression or frustration to this as you dart and out the window, falling from the second story. Go ahead and make an acrobatics check.
He was young, he was inexperienced, and he believed himself to be immortal. So of course he would constantly rush into things he shouldn't have. This is what leads into the scenario that eventually leads to Vax being fated to a specific, well, fate. Over the course of the campaign, he has many run-ins and interactions with the matron, otherwise known as basically the goddess of death, the Raven Queen. Over the course of the campaign, he grows a pretty strong connection with her, becomes her champion, and eventually has to sacrifice his life to her.
I pull my sister in close and I say, take me instead, you raven bitch.
Go ahead and make a persuasion check.
That's a good offer.
Now this doesn't mean that he dies, instead it means that once his story is over, he will become officially her champion, living alongside her and on death, and forever be this angel of death, a fate that he cannot escape. Now the reason that I wanted to bring him up as compared to our other example later is because he is a very interesting reaction to this. Pretty early on, despite the fact that Vax seems like the type of character that would push back against this, he accepts it. He accepts that it was a consequence of his actions, of the things he chose to do, and he decides that it is an okay scenario for him to develop. He decides it is worth what he's going to be fated to do.
Very heavy. He was very, he felt very full as well, and knew that his sister was taken care of.
And a lot of the campaign revolves around his acceptance of this fate. He has interactions with other characters that get extremely tense. He has interactions with other characters where they beg him to do something else to fight against this because he can't just abandon them, but he understands that this is how it is. Now, it doesn't mean he doesn't have trepidation against it. It doesn't mean that he doesn't push back against it, but at the end of the day, he knows this is where he's going to go. And it was for the sake of his friends, for the sake of his loved ones, for the sake of his sister. And so to him, it's okay.
Thank you. How lucky I have been to have had all of you. How lucky indeed. Thank you.
And as he turns and walks towards the darkened cloak of his matron, in the darkness of her cloak, you see a brief light, but it's brighter for you. As you walk forward, you see reaching from the light, the dark hair, the fair skin, and the wide smile of your mother, Elena. As she greets you, she says, "I'm so proud." The rest of you watch as her cloak begins to fade, like a slowly scattered shadow in creeping sunlight. And as the snowdrop flowers continue with each step, you blink, and it's just feathers.
Is it harsh? Is it hard? Is it honestly just emotionally taxing? Yes, of course. But it's a good story. The story of somebody accepting their fate. It is definitely something that I believe is well done. Now, on the same side of that coin, we have the other example we're going to use today, Gerard. Gerard is the Frog Prince in Never After. Never After is Dimension 20's horror campaign where all of the characters are different fairy tale characters which are put into a much more dark version of their stories in an attempt to escape it.
Once upon a time, we enter into a world of tales from beyond. Princess, you wake up. You can't move. It's hard to see. You can't Close your eyes. You can't close your mouth. In a twitch of movement, there's sudden pain. And you can feel a sharp tug in the inside of your body. Briars are growing out of your mouth.
Now, Gerard's fate is very obvious. He's fated to be a frog. Now, anybody who knows the original story knows that the Frog Prince is a story that talks about somebody who was rude to a fairy or a witch. It depends on what version of the story you're watching. And then he gets cursed to be a frog until he can finally get someone to love him for who he is, not his money or his wealth, etc. Eventually, he does so, he is kissed, he turns back into a prince, happily ever after. Now, in Never After, the story continues on, and it turns out that it's not so easy as happily ever after. Yes, he got somebody to love him, but now he has to put in work, he has to change, he has to develop, he has to grow, he has to compromise with his wife, which is not something he wanted to do, not something he was prepared for. And so the love begins to fail, and he begins to revert back into a frog.
You notice a fly flying. They build castles like this for a lot of reasons. As a place of safety in times where...
Right.
Are you listening to what I'm saying?
Yes, there's just a fly.
Okay. Well, ignore the fly. You have heard of what now befalls all of the realms. Giants striding in the land, witches, terrible storms, creatures of the sea.
Flies in the banquet hall.
Is that where you thought I was going?
Can we get rid of the fly? Would that be okay?
It's a fly. It's a fly. Give me a charisma saving throw.
12.
The fly comes right in the target zone. It's right there.
Trying to grab.
Ah!
Did you see that? Okay. There's been some things going on with me. I've been a bit distracted as well. Do you remember when we met and I was a frog?
Yes, sure.
And then we fell in love and everything was good then.
Mm-hmm.
And then I became a handsome prince and everything is still good, so I should still be a human being, but I'm getting frog stuff back. Does that mean anything to you, or?
Things are not well.
Not out there, no, but.
I love you.
And I love you.
Isn't there something horrifying about the idea that our lives ended on the day we wed? Because, Gerard, that's what I feel from you. You say that you are happy, you say that things are well, but here in this moment, I don't know that it has to do with the war. I don't know that the way I feel about you has to do with the war. The way I feel about you may have something to do with how I feel about how you feel about the war.
Right? I just thought we had figured this all out. That we had been, there was the tough thing, and then we're on the same team here. You know what I'm saying? So everything here could just be good if we wanted it to be.
What would it look like, everything being good?
Oh, we'd be getting dressed right now. We'd be talking excitedly about who we were going to meet and gossip with at the ball.
I will do my best to give you what I can.
His fate over the course of this series is to become the frog, is to be the frog or be loved and turn into a prince. And he constantly grapples with this dichotomy. He goes back and forth on what he wants, because over the course of the story, the more frog-like he becomes, the more powerful he becomes. Literally, the more levels he gets in the story. The frog part of him is what's keeping him alive, but it's the part of him that's fated to disappear. And he really struggles with this. It creates this really interesting story of him grappling with who he is, what he is, and if it's worth continuing to push back against this. And then he meets his wife again. And there's this really tense moment of them discussing with each other him attempting to connect with her while also under some pretty dire circumstances where he had to keep some secrets, and eventually running away from her, knowing that he's only confirming to her that he's the terrible person he always was. And so, what is he? Is he a man? Or is he a frog?
You are riding off to the north to get away from here as fast as you can. You look behind you, and Gerard, on a nat 20, you see a weeping Elodie standing on the ramparts looking at you ride off into the distance as Snow White puts a hand on her shoulder and Cinderella flanks her to the other side. On a 27, you look back around and you see La Bête, you see the beast emerge and just look down at the tracks you're leaving in the snow and not even bother. You feel the chill kick up in the air. And for all of you, especially in Gerard with that nat 20, I think all of you look and see the princesses like beholding you escape from this place. And there is a chill wind that blows as night begins to descend.
This leads to the end of the campaign where he is eventually faced with a decision. What is he going to do? Who does he believe he is? And what does he need to be? And in this moment, he also accepts his fate similarly to Vax, but in a much more direct way. A much more player agency-esque way. He decides to look at the situation and knows what he needs to do, knows who he needs to be, and knows he can no longer rely on that portion of himself which relies on his wife to decide who he is. He's a frog. The frog is the portion of him that has helped him get through this, is the portion of him that is ugly, but is the portion of him that is the most him.
The water shimmers, and looking towards Rapunzel, you see your reflection. You are at the most frog-like you have ever been.
I would give it to you. I would give you my name, my humanity, for hers, for her name.
You feel somewhere within you a book moving. You've accepted your own story. You don't even have a name in your own story. You're just a frog who becomes a prince. And you feel it change, and somewhere beyond the edges of the never after, you have asked that Elodie's story be hers. You become enormous, like split out of your armor, and the heron, frightened, flaps away.
I try to snatch it.
You, a whole bird, into your massive frog behemoth mouth. There's just a massive fucking bullfrog with a crown, and you are a frog once more.
Because he has accepted it, he has grown from it, he has made it his own, he has become his own person, and so he turns into a giant frog for the rest of the series. He's just like literally just a giant frog. He ends up eating Rapunzel whole. It's a whole thing.
You said I didn't have any friends, but my wife is my friend. And then I eat her.
You see, Rapunzel goes like, as his feet disappear in this massive frog, and she looks at Elodie and says, your husband, this guy, you like him? He's good, this is good for you. And then it's another like
Just
30
emotionless frog.
And it's a long time of just hair. It's a lot.
It's disgusting, actually.
This is the moment. This is the horror part of the campaign. This is the horror part. Is a frog just swallowing air.
Regardless, it is another example of a character accepting fate, but in a much different way. While Vax seems to do so very passively, just accepting that this is what's happened to him, Gerard jumps directly into said fate. But the reason I want to bring all this up is because fate, like I said at the beginning of the video, is an interesting concept in TTRPGs because it requires both the GM and the player working together to decide what the fate of the player is. In the case of Critical Role with Vax, Liam and Matt had a lot of conversations about what needed to happen, and that's not just me extrapolating from that. There's plenty of stuff in Talks Machina where they do discuss that, but I can't show clips of it because Talks Machina has been removed off their channel, and I want to respect that. That being said, there is a lot of conversation between them about it, and there's a lot of conversation about what Liam's going to do about it. And he found it was much more interesting for Vax to finally take responsibility for something and choose to become that version of himself to protect his family. He felt that was exactly where Vax's story was heading. Meanwhile, with Gerard, he chose to embrace what was happening to him to make himself stronger because that's what he wanted. But the GM had to produce that and place it in front of them. The concept of fate in TTRPGs is so interesting, not because the GM describes it and narrates it and makes it so, but because the GM produces the question and lets the player choose. It is so important when talking about these sort of scenarios in these games to present it in front of the players in a way that allows them to choose how they're going to handle it, how they're going to embrace it. And you know what? That is exactly what we have to do. See, fate isn't something that really truly exists as far as we can tell. It doesn't matter if you're religious or not or what you believe in. The truth is we don't know what's in front of us, what's next. You cannot know. It doesn't matter what you believe in. It doesn't matter if you believe that the world is already predetermined, if you believe that it's not. We are all in the same boat. We don't know what's next. And so the only thing we can do is have it laid out in front of us and choose to decide. And we have to make decisions. Is it best to do things for other people? Is it best to do things for ourselves? And so too is true for us. We have to decide when it's worth giving a part of ourselves to help other people and when it's worth to love yourself and do something for yourself. It's okay to make that decision, but it's never an easy one, regardless of which decision you make. We are all left with fate in front of us, and truthfully, at the end of the day, it is your decision. You get to choose, but that becomes so difficult when you don't allow yourself to do so, when you convince yourself that you must do something because it's what's expected of you. Sometimes we need to just give it to somebody else. Sometimes we need to give a part of ourselves. I do so every day for my wife, and she does so every day for me. It's part of what a relationship is. But there are a lot of the times in our days where we have to look at each other and we have to say, hey, I can't do that today. Today, I need to do this for me. I need to do something for me. And that's important. That's necessary, and it's allowed.
There's also some days where your wife calls you turkey, 20-pound turkey.
There are some days where your wife calls you a 20-pound turkey. I've been called a 20-pound turkey multiple times today, and I still don't know why. I got no explanation for this. I'm just apparently a 20-pound turkey, and I choose to do something for myself by saying, stop calling me a 20-pound turkey. The point is, it's allowed to do something for yourself. You are allowed to take care of yourself, and you are allowed to give a portion of yourself to help others. You just need to give yourself permission to make that choice. You are not fated to anything. Your life is your own. And when we play TTRPGs, that's the point. The characters are our own. The choices are our own. We get to choose. We get to live through a story, and we do so simply so that we can experience it. But experience it in your own life as well, because that is one of the greatest things that you could possibly do, and it truly does create some of the best moments when you allow yourself to choose what to do, and you allow yourself to care for what matters, and that is also you. So, wife, you want to hit them with the like, comment, subscribe?
Like, comment, subscribe. Don't eat fish. Fish are friends.
Fish are, you can eat fish if you want, but make sure it's properly prepared so that you don't get poisoned.
Don't let Bruce eat the fish.
Don't, that is such, why are we making Finding Nemo references?
Bye!
Bye!